right, guys, we are back for another episode of the On Call Empath, and today I have a very special guest, Laura Vaisman. She's an author, writer, and mental health advocate. Today, we're going to touch on a lot of different issues in mental health and what's going on in the world. A lot of you empaths that are going through a lot. I think you're going to learn a lot in this episode. So, with that said, Laura, thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast. I know I've been planning it for a while, so thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So to be honest, like I've been following you quite a bit, for some long time here, and I know you talked to Gary V a couple
Mhm.
times, and that's what kind of drew me into your whole thing. And then you came out with some books, and then also you traveled a little bit around the world. Can you tell us a little bit about just what you've been through and where you are now, just for the audience, so they know a little bit about you?
Um, well, I feel like my story has changed quite a bit since I've been doing EMDR. But I started off as a travel blogger back in the day for Traveling Jersey Girl. I did that for like over a decade. And that was with my first book, Spiritual Nomad, that I wrote about the traumas that I went through and how much traveling has really like healed. I'm just going to retract that because I don't really particularly like using the word healed because it makes it seem like I don't ever struggle, but parts of my soul were definitely, um, it traveling just really helped me get through
Hmm.
some stuff and just let me understand perspectives on life and just, learning from people from different cultures and all that. So, and I was able to bring that home. And then, so, you know, But yeah, so I just always kind of shared my struggles, and I just felt like, you know, people need to hear that what they're going through is one, it's normal a lot of the times. A lot of the times that when it doesn't feel normal, it's because we don't often speak about it, and then it creates a taboo, and then people are often afraid. Um, so that was my, I mean, even though I had a travel blog, like I spoke about mental health a lot.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to have like an authentic, transparent, real, honest conversation,
Hmm.
even when I was traveling, because I was struggling with anxiety when I was doing that too.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where where I am today, is like just bringing such a rawness and a
Hmm.
transparency to mental health because it's needed.
Yeah, and one of the things that really like kind of spoke to me is you're not afraid to just kind of lay it out all on the line there, and you kind of tell people exactly what you've been through. And I know there are a lot of people that are tuning in who keep it inside. They may not be as vocal, and they just try to make the best out of it by just kind of keeping it all to themselves. Um, does that ever cross your mind? Like, okay, if you're like, I don't want too many people knowing about my mental health issues, they may treat me differently, or, whether it's work or friends. Are you now pretty cool with it, just letting everyone know? Like, how do you
Um,
handle that?
I mean, I do share quite a bit, but honestly, that's only the tip of the iceberg. I don't share a lot. There's stuff that I still keep very private. Um, I'm also still working through, like, I'm actively still working through my own stuff. So there's stuff that I still don't feel comfortable speaking of, or it makes, or I'm scared to because it scares me. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not in that place yet where I'm like, okay, I can talk about this. Like, like, there's been moments where I was scared to even say it to my therapist, So, um, the stuff that I do share, I don't really care, to be honest, like what most people think. I have been struggling with, um, family hearing the stories. So that's
Hmm.
been very hard to maneuver. Um, I've gone on to just block my family on my social media because it just was like, you know what? I need to keep it separate. And I found myself filtering myself and withholding my truth, and
Hmm.
because I knew my family was watching.
Yeah.
So it was affecting my craft, and I'm like, I'm a writer and I'm huge with mental health. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I talk to everybody all the time and I'm like, I can't do it myself because I'm like, I feel like, everybody's watching. Like, I don't
Yeah,
care about the world, but my family is, it's different when it's your family watching. But I have to get to a point where I don't care about that either. But I'm
yeah.
getting there.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way when I started the podcast. It was like, man, what if they ask me what it's about, and why I started it? And honestly, it's probably because of a lot of the trauma that I went through, um, and a lot of stuff that they don't know that I do openly talk about on here as a platform. But I just felt like it needed to be kind of set out in the world. Um, so kind of going more towards EMDR therapy for those that are listening. Can you explain what it is and how it kind of helped you get to kind of like more clarity? How did that kind of help you in a sense?
So EMDR is one, it's a trauma therapy. So I did what was it? I did like CBT, is it CBT? Yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy. I've done psychodynamic therapy, but most of those therapies are just talk therapy. Did that for years. And I had moments where, speaking about my traumas and stuff, even when traumas were still kind of like active and they were like happening still, um, I never left really feeling great. And I could not figure it out for the life of me why I did not feel great. I was also studying forensic psychology at the time, so I was in school for this. Never once, well, you know what? Forensic psychology was kind of the only field where I was hearing about trauma. It didn't really dive deep into how deep trauma impacts the body, but I was like, what is that? What can I find to hit like the body stuff,
Yeah.
right? So EMDR kind of it you're not really talking much. I mean, sometimes you are, but most of the time the way I can explain it like in layman's terms is you're kind of being guided back. Like if you've ever done like a guided meditation, it's kind of like being guided back to the trauma itself.
Hmm.
I mean, you're with a professional, so you know, they don't just immediately throw you back into that trauma. There's
Yeah.
process to that. But when you get to that point, you already know it's gonna, okay, we're gonna work on this. So it's like you already kind of know what's gonna happen. You're always in control. I could stop at any point. And because at the time of trauma, you can't like you're trying to survive.
Hmm.
So your brain is just thinking of survival. So emotions kind of go in the back burner. It's like, yeah, whatever. We just need you to be alive, but we'll deal with that stuff later. But the stuff later, like how long that could be years.
Yeah.
If if you don't know if you don't know the impact of trauma, which is why I almost talk about it at nauseum because I'm like, if we just understood how much
Mm.
trauma impacts us, we would be so much better off.
Yeah.
So much better off just as individuals, as a society, as humanity, as big as you
Hmm.
can get, we would be so much better off. And it's a
Yeah.
very powerful therapy, and it's been night and day for me.
How long did it take you? How many sessions would you say? I know everyone's different, but for you, like, was it a matter of like after the first session? Because I've actually had it done myself, and I felt something right after my first session. It was pretty powerful. But what would you say?
Well, I'm still in it, so it's been over a year for me. I think it's different um when you have PTSD on like maybe one singular event versus kind of like complex
Yeah.
PTSD where it's multiple over a span of time. I have multiple over a span of time. So it doesn't surprise me that it's taking me longer, but I don't think of a timeline, but I will say like you got to think of it like this. So you're going over like cuz I'm 32, so like let's say like over 10 years, 15 years, maybe 20 of stuff. But overcome so much within a year,
Mhm.
almost a year and some change. That
Yeah,
doesn't even compare. Do you know how, like, if you did talk therapy, you'd be doing it for the rest of your life.
right.
So I, it's the fast track to
Mhm,
like healing, aka like getting to a place of acceptance, because you're never gonna like erase what
mhm,
happened to you. You're gonna get to a place where you can accept it, and it's
mhm.
not gonna like overtake your body. It's like having like, it's like trying to diffuse the charge that it has.
Yeah. So, I just wanna switch gears here a little bit. I know
Mhm.
there's a lot of people that are going through trauma right now that are tuning in, um, and for those people that are listening, maybe, they've tried different, things like EMDR and, CBT and all that, but how do you make your life, how do you make your life just livable? I mean, because I know there's so many people that have triggers and they need certain, um, I guess they need, like, for me, I know, like, I'm not the type of person to drive and go to work and be in an office, like, that is just not, I mean, that's something I cannot do ever again.
Mhm.
I can't be in a room full of bunch of people. Um, I don't like crowded spaces because I start getting triggered, and noise and all this kinda stuff. You've wrote 2 books, you've done
Mhm.
so much, you've grew so much in just in a short, period of time that I've been kinda watching you on Instagram and growing. What do you have to say to anyone that's listening who is just trying to just get day to day? Because you know that throughout some days, like, there's some days where I can't, it's, like, hard to even, like, breathe and function and put a smile on, for the world, because you said it, like, most people don't get it, and sometimes even when you go to a therapist, they might, not just write it off, but they might say something like, you know, um, it's temporary, you'll get over it. And that really sometimes makes things worse, especially with trauma victims.
Mhm.
So what is your take on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I hate being told that too, but at the same time, I know that's true, that it is temporary, but you don't want to hear it in that moment when you're actually
Mhm,
activated or you're triggered. Nobody wants to hear that. Um, it's been tough. It's been tough lately because like like I thought I had it. Do you know what I mean? Like I was like, "Oh no, I'm good." Like I did so much work on myself and then it's like EMDR comes and is like, "Yeah, no, just kidding. You didn't do shit." Well, I didn't, not that I didn't do shit, but it's just like, "Oh yeah, no, we're going to take you for a ride," you know? And it's just seeing how much I was kind of like white knuckling life
mhm,
before. Um and I just noticed it in my body. Like I didn't realize that I woke up with adrenaline every day. That's what woke me up.
wow.
And since doing EMDR, I don't have that anymore. And I was like, wow, like how the fuck did I, how did I live like this? Like I, like just pure anxiety and adrenaline
Mhm,
and like, you know, it was worse when I worked in an office too, but like I mean, I've been working from home, but it's like, wow, I did that for a very long time.
mhm,
And it's just there's like you just notice things as you live life. Like you're just like, "Oh, you know what? I used to have this so much and now it's like I'm okay." Like I used to have a lot of anxiety socially as well, like where I felt like I had to have at least one glass of wine or one drink just to chill me
mhm.
out. I don't need that anymore.
Yeah,
Like, I'm finding myself where I'm like, "Oh my god, like, I don't need that." Or, like, I didn't feel that urge, not that I it was an addiction thing, but it was just a something to just, like, settle the nerves so I can be relaxed, but
mhm,
that's a major thing for me because I always wanted to get to a point where
mm,
I was like, "I just wanna enjoy myself and just be confident and, like,
mhm,
not feel anxious with people." But I'm also I give myself the grace
mm,
that if I do feel anxious, something my therapist said, she's like, "You have choices. Like, you have agency. You know, if you are in a social situation and you don't feel okay, go to the bathroom. breathe it, like take a breather,
Mhm.
splash water on your face, or go outside if you can. Go take a like just get some fresh air. Just the fact that you know you have a choice and you're not stuck
Yeah.
help you with your anxiety and when you get triggered.
Yeah, and, like, now when you traveled all over, um, did that affect you at all, or were you just pretty much, like, just happy just meeting new people, and how
Oh,
did that work for you?
oh no, I had it was I did have that, but I had oh no, I would have a anxiety panic attack like the moment I landed.
Hmm,
I would have anxiety for a couple days. I would just be overwhelmed by everything and just I don't know. I think it was just not allowing myself to listen to my body, like if I was tired or I was just too hard on myself. Like, because I would think to myself, like, I'm in Switzerland. I'm like, I should be so excited.
yeah.
I'm like, I'm happy, it's beautiful. But I'm like, but I feel miserable. So,
Yeah,
like, just the pushing myself through it versus,
yeah,
like, you know what? You were on a long flight. You probably didn't eat enough. You're tired.
mhm,
You need to rest. Because if I did that, then I probably wouldn't. But I tend to not get that anymore
mhm.
either, the recent times I've traveled. So but that's also a good thing. But once I get used to it, then yeah, I mean, love meeting
Mm.
people and talking to people.
One big thing I notice is like with support. I know a lot of people may not have that support system, whether it's, somebody that they're married to or a girlfriend, boyfriend, mother, father, somebody that's in their corner. Did you have somebody when you were going through all this, or were you just kind of handling this all on your own and nobody really knew what was going on? Um, what was
Uh,
that like?
I'm realizing now I was kind of doing it alone. Um, I did have family support, but it was, because my my sibling was going through something, so it was such a like everybody was so focused on my sibling that I kind of got lost in you know, in the mess of it all. But
Mhm,
and I think I just always was used to being alone as a kid. Um just I don't know why, but just that's just how I was and I still am very much like that, but I think it's finding community wherever you are because
mhm,
um or wherever you can because even if that means social media, like I was in like these little support groups like when I
mhm,
was like when I was in my 20s that like was amazing. Like I had so many amazing friendships even though they were online, I never met them, but like
mhm.
that helped me get through sometimes. And
Sure.
sometimes those friendships or relationships I had with them were better than family and friends. I'm not
And
even joking,
real people, yeah,
and so that got me through and just finding people who, you know what, who are just like, I get it. You just need to
yeah,
be, people just need to be validated and acknowledged
yeah,
that like you're going through some shit and it's hard and it's
mhm,
tough and it's like, yeah, it's a lot.
and one thing that I notice, especially in our culture, at least in the US, I feel like the mental health system it's not there yet. I think it's starting to, but I think there needs to be a lot more work. There has to be more access for people to get help, um, but overall, I mean, I just feel like where can you go for actually help, like, other than, just a traditional therapist where, a lot of times, especially nowadays, people don't have money to get a therapist because this whole insurance company. So
Um,
then they just don't go, and, they try to rely on people that they live with, but then they become toxic, and it's just like a cycle. Um,
it's really, yeah, it's tough.
and then medication, which is another shit show where your insurance doesn't cover one medication, but it covers another one that which doesn't do anything. So it's just like they're made from the same company. Like so it's like money driven. Like it's just all like I feel like it's greed and money. It's not really about helping people.
No, and going through it myself as like somebody who needed medication when I was younger and also being on the mental health professional side, I see both sides of it. In like I've witnessed both sides of it.
Mhm,
You know, when I was working in the field to tell my clients like I can't do this for you, not because I didn't want to, but because the system wouldn't allow.
mhm,
It's heartbreaking. And it's like I don't know what it's going to take for us to get to a point where, you know, people just get more help. But I'm going to take it back to that if we focus on trauma, if therapists and psychiatrists were trained in trauma, which a lot of them are not, shocking,
mhm.
um, we would be better off. Like we would not, not that's not saying that medication does not help or we wouldn't need, but we wouldn't need it as much. And it
Mhm,
wouldn't be if trauma was hit first. Like imagine somebody was like I just don't it just doesn't make sense to me and even when I was in school, it never made sense to me as to why we don't look at the deeper root. So when I studied
right.
forensic psychology, I was analyzing like serial killers all day. So the part of forensic psychology was so it's just typical law shit, but the psychology side was like, well, what are the mitigating factors? What is the trauma like? What was his childhood
Mhm.
like? So I always had that in my head. And I'm like, why is that not
Registering,
implemented
yeah.
implemented everywhere else? Like, why are we not looking at this person as like, what happened to you?
Mhm,
And like, I've seen it when I worked in the field of my own clients. I always would read
mhm,
their chart and read their story, and I would be like, I get why they're
mhm,
here. Like, I get it. Or I understand their symptoms more because I'm like, okay, you're being triggered by that.
mhm.
But yeah, it's
So, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Now, speaking of triggers, what are some things that you do currently, like when you feel like a trigger coming on, or maybe a panic attack? I don't know if you get those anymore, but what types of things have you learned that's worked for you to kind of calm down your nervous system and get that adrenaline? Because you said you don't get that adrenaline in the morning, so
yeah.
um,
It happened to me recently, like within the last 2 weeks. So um it doesn't happen on a daily basis like it used to. But
mhm,
because I understand my body more and what I'm being triggered, there's things where so for me sometimes it's like a lot of like if I don't feel safe, like I'll just get triggered by that. But, like I was in a restaurant with friends and we were just like at a bar and like I knew
mhm,
we were going to be, drinking heavily, or at least
mhm,
my friends were, which is a trigger for me.
yeah,
Um, so I was feeling fine and then I went to the bathroom and I felt like a panic attack come on, like out of nowhere, like felt dizzy, got sweaty, and I was like, oh my God, like it's fucking happening. Like what?
yeah,
So like I just know immediately for me, don't fight it. The moment you fight it, the worse it gets. And it's very hard to not fight it because you're like, I don't want to feel like this. Like, but you have to just be like, because the moment you don't allow it to come through is when it loses its
it's
power.
yeah,
And it will not, like, I can tell you 10 out of 10, it's, it works every time when you learn to not fight it and
mhm,
just kind of breathe through it. And it's like, it's cliche, but I'm like, okay,
mhm,
like I got it. Like I got this. Like taking deep breaths because when you're anxious, you tend to take shallow
mhm,
breaths. And like for me, because like that example that I showed you, like I was getting dizzy. So I bent over to like make sure all the blood rushed to my head so I wouldn't like, just to get myself out of the dizziness. And like I took which this tends to help, but I mean, if you have an ice cube
I
Um,
heard of that, yeah.
it helps to put it like in the middle of your chest. It's
Mhm.
like trying to, because that's like to um get your nervous system and your vagus nerve to
Yeah,
chill out.
yeah.
And if you don't have that, I do like just like a cold rag or something. Like if
Mhm.
you're in a bathroom, just get a paper towel and do that, or just put cold
Yeah,
water on your face, on the back of your neck, and that'll calm you down
mhm,
too.
yeah. I heard ice is very effective,
Ice
even
is,
just holding it that, you know, I also heard if you put your finger around your, orbital your, like, eye, like, your, eyebrow or area, and you go in circles, like, that does something, and so
mhm.
there's all kinds of different things, but yeah,
But the triggers though, that's a question for you to ask yourself. What am I being triggered by? And it's not the people in your office. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
something deeper. So
yeah,
you have to like be like a detective
yeah,
in yourself and like, where is this coming from? When's the last time I felt this? Or what was the first time? When was the first time I felt like this?
yeah,
And when you start to trace it back, it starts to make sense.
yeah,
And then for me, it's like, okay, I can trace it back. And I'm like, well, that makes sense because I never dealt with it,
yeah,
or I never processed it. And that's what EMDR does. It allows
mm,
you to go back and process it now as you are today to just
right.
like, it's like when you watch a show and you're like, oh, I missed it. And then you're like, let's rewind and rewatch it and see what I
What
missed,
happened? Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And it releases, it just releases things in the body.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was like, the lights going left and to right, and I had the thing in
Mhm.
my hand, and, yeah, it was intense, even after, like, couple days after, things started coming out of the
Oh yeah.
blue, I
Those
was really
those in between
oh
sessions
my
are,
gosh, I started
yeah.
freaking out.
Yeah, but you know what? I think because a lot of people DM me and um I'm just gonna make a shameless plug, but this is why wanted to create. I'm probably gonna do it in the new year, where I want a support group because support groups always helped me when I was younger. And I think
Mhm,
just being in a support group, like just a private support group, especially if you're doing EMDR, it just feels nice to be like,
mhm,
is that normal? Like for you to feel very intense emotions post is so normal. And I think, I'm very lucky that my
mhm,
therapist is incredible at what she does. These
mhm.
therapists should be explaining this to their clients. And I've like talked with people who DM me, and it seems like a lot of them are not. Um, I ask 1,000 questions all the time because I'm just like, what does this mean? Or like, should I like, why are my dreams insane? Like, like why? And there's a thing called EMDR dreams. Like, so,
Oh, I had nightmares, like, I
oh
would
yeah,
see
oh
animals and stuff, I'd be
yeah. Mhm.
punching the wall, and I'm like, "Oh gosh, I hope this doesn't get any worse because 'cause I'm gonna knock someone out," and
I get it. So what my therapist told me to do is to write all my dreams down from day one
Mm,
till I still do it. They're not happening as much, but they were going off, man.
yeah, it's
And
scary.
they're intense. Like for mine were, I mean, my dreams are always have always been intense and vivid. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's your brain post EMDR is still processing.
yeah.
So you have to pay attention to them because they're not literal, but they're metaphorical.
Yes, mhm,
And so when you think of it like that, you're like, "Oh my God, like wow." It's just your brain is
yeah.
just such an incredible thing.
I remember once I was like feel like I was getting buried alive, I literally felt like there was dirt being thrown on me, and it was a time in my life where I felt, like, trapped and, I wasn't supported, and that's where that was coming from, so I kinda did the same thing, I wrote it down and tried to get the meaning out of it, and so
Mm.
once I put meaning to it, it started to get less and less, and, the body is a remarkable it adapts very well, so
Yeah.
Laura, I wanted to, give you the last word here, just wrapping up, let the audience know where they can find you, on social media and what you're up to, I'd love to definitely have you back anytime you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So you can pretty much find me everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I am Laura Vaisman on all across the board. Um, like I mentioned before, I'm trying to set up doing a support group for those doing trauma therapy and EMDR. It's called Finding Your Way Back Home.
Hmm.
Probably most likely gonna do that in 2023. I just think it's a great space to work as a group. I think
Hmm.
group work and just the community
Hmm.
is so powerful. And you know what? And it's just people just want to know that they are like not going crazy. You know,
Yeah.
like, you just need to feel that validation of like, okay, like it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Just find your people, guys. I know it's a crazy world right now with everything kind of falling apart, but you're not alone. There's a lot
No,
of
you never
people.
are. You never
Yeah.
are. Yeah. And I'm working on my third book about my EMDR
Congratulations.
German, yeah, about EMDR and trauma and just because when I think of my first book, even Spiritual Nomad, it's like or Penny Panic with the anxiety one, I'm like that's not even me anymore. I'm like no, because I'm like it's just so this book is just going to be really different because I've grown so much and I just see things so different now in
Yeah.
this trauma lens.
Right.
Um, and
Post-trauma lens. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm
Well,
excited
cool. Well, keep up the amazing work. You're very inspirational. That's why I wanted you on this podcast. And you're always welcome back. So thanks again for being on the show.
yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right. All
Okay.
right, guys, that does it for this episode. Stay tuned. I got a lot more guests coming on, and the Elite Coaches series starts in October. Look for those guests that are coming on that. So, with that said, we are out.